All right, everybody. We are live this Sunday. I am so excited to be continuing our NBC webinar series, spearheaded by Abigail Johnston and our amazing guests, Julia and Christine from Grasp. So I am so glad this is, for some of us who are celebrating Easter Sunday together or Passover or just a lovely Sunday together. I just feel like, when you're diagnosed with breast cancer, it doesn't matter if there's a holiday, if there's vacation planned, like cancer just happens. And so I think finding time in all of our crazy busy schedules to come together is just really apropos. So I'm really glad that we can be here today and share in this great conversation. So thank you for joining us.
Happy to be here.
Abigail, I'll turn things over to you, Abigail.
Thank you, Laura.
To introduce a little bit about our webinar series in general.
Thanks, Laura. I'm so thankful that Laura handles all the technical things and can figure out how to stream what we're doing here. So we're streaming on Facebook as well as the survivingbreastcancer.org website. So wherever you are joining us, welcome and feel free to comment. Laura and I will keep an eye on those comments as we talk today. But I was reminded recently that Allison Tischler, who was one of the brainstorms behind this series, we've hit over a year since she passed away from NBC, and it's such a sobering reality that we lose so many amazing, wonderful people. But yet we have the opportunity to highlight some of the efforts of those of us who are living with this disease. So that's what this series is to talk about the things that other people aren't talking about, but to also elevate those people who are taking what was probably the worst possible thing to happen and has turned that into a purpose and has turned that into something amazing, which is what both Julia and Christine have done with Grasp. So, but I want to talk first about them individually and where they come from in terms of their backgrounds and where they are with their treatment. I know you guys have work, so you guys have decided to introduce yourself. So, Julia, does it make sense for you to go first?
Sure, yes. So I'm originally from Brazil. I have been living in the US for about half my life. I came for college and have stayed. I never thought I would be doing anything with cancer or science. I studied economics and used to work for the central bank. And then I was diagnosed at 29 with breast cancer while I was pregnant with my son. And those were some very, very crazy days. I received chemotherapy while pregnant, delivered my son, and after his birth, discovered that the cancer was already spread. So started treatment for metastatic breast cancer. And that was in 2013. That baby is now almost 9 years old. I had some very rough times in the beginning, especially due to brain mets and heart problems. But, over time, we did find treatment that was right for me. And I have been able to manage it. And I'm very fortunate to still be here.
Absolutely. Julia, did you run into doctors who weren't willing to take your concerns seriously while you were pregnant? I know that not many people get diagnosed while they're pregnant.
Yeah. No, so I had an OB that was, she believed me the first time that I showed it to her. I think I might have, I think she might have said, let's take a look in 2 weeks if it has changed, but it was not a very long time. And so then she insisted that I do the ultrasound right away. And yeah, good. Definitely heard many terrible stories, but I myself was lucky with my doctors.
it is very different for those of us who are diagnosed prior to getting mammograms, just in terms of who we see. I was breastfeeding, tandem breastfeeding my boys when I was diagnosed, and it's kind of a no man's land. I mean, that's kind of a pun too, but just, what doctor treats you for breastfeeding? There aren't breastfeeding doctors. And so you kind of fall into that weird, like, where do you go when you have something going on? I ended up at my PCP, but anyway, just important to remind everybody to listen to your bodies. When you know something is wrong, follow up and make sure that you get the medical treatment that you need. So Christine, would love to hear from you if you'd like to introduce yourself. I hope you're not frozen.
She is.
It does look like she's frozen. Oh, there we go. Okay, good.
It's hear me now. Yeah, I don't know if it's me or you, Abigail. I'm having like weird, so I'll try to make mine brief. But no, I don't know if it's me or you. It might be me. My name is Christine Hodgson, and I was diagnosed with metastatic breast cancer in 2015. I did have a bad story with a doctor where I had a surgeon that I had an OBGYN who referred me to a surgeon, and the surgeon told me that I was too young to have cancer and I didn't have any history of breast cancer in my family. I was 34 years old. It took about 8 months for me to get my actual diagnosis. He refused to biopsy. When he did, it finally came back. And of course, we were hoping for an early stage, but upon further scanning, we saw that there was something in my lungs. So I did have a very small metastasis in my lung, which made me metastatic. I was also diagnosed with thyroid cancer.
Oh no.
Yeah. She's
Am I still frozen? Can you hear me?
Better. You're back. Okay, sorry.
Okay. I saw it stop. I was like, okay. So yeah, I'll let Julia go. She knows my story well enough. So if I'm forgetting anything, but yeah, I think both Julia and I were really propelled into advocacy by our own experiences. We both had to become advocates for ourselves. My life before cancer was focused on conservation biology. So I have a master's in conservation. And that helped me with
Oh no.
okay, I think I can see it. I can see it when it stops.
There you go.
Okay.
All right, so
I'm
we
sure
heard
my case
conservation
gets
biology.
lovely. Yeah, that's all I said was that I had a conservation biology degree, which really helped with understanding the science. But I think what Julie and I have learned is that you don't have to have a degree in science to understand it. You just need a good teacher. So I'm going to let Julia take it away with our presentation, because I'm afraid that my internet's going to keep messing everything up. But if you have questions, we're happy to talk after.
So, Christine, is your status, would that be oligometastatic?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
I have like and oligo can mean 3 to 4 sites. It doesn't have to be one, but I literally had 1 6 millimeter. So like a little over half a centimeter met in my lung. And that's what made me metastatic. And maybe now in 2022, I would have been treated differently, maybe more aggressively, but they kind of said stage 4, that's it. We're going to do a lumpectomy. So I didn't have to do a mastectomy. And I'm kind of grateful that I didn't have to do super aggressive treatment. And I've been 7 years now NED and stable. So I'm okay with that. I was okay with less aggressive, but yeah, it's definitely a difference now. I think they're treating oligometastatic very differently.
And depending on the site of the metastasis as well, from what I understand. But I think one of the things that I was so impressed by was from a quality of life perspective when you got back to your oncologist and said, yep, Herceptin and Perjeta together work great, but I don't want to be on Perjeta anymore.
Yes. I had
How long has it been?
It's been, so it was like right when the pandemic started is when I said I would really like to drop this drug. I had been on it for 5 years. I had really bad itching, pruritus, I think is the technical term. My arms, my scalp, my neck, and it was almost akin to pain where like I really couldn't like focus anymore. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't function. And I found out through the community, not my doctors, but I found out through the social media community that it was due to this drug, Perjeta. And so I had a conversation with my oncologist, and it was a negotiation where I said, I just would really like to try just Herceptin. And with the pandemic, I like the idea of being in the infusion center for less time. It like cut my time in half. So there were many reasons why, and I'm very fortunate and privileged to have that option, that I had been stable for so long that they allowed me to do it. So I still take Herceptin, and I'm also on tamoxifen because I am triple positive. So I've kind of got 2 targets to hit. And but I'm so much happier without Perjeta, I have to say. It just changed my life in such a good way. I was just so much happier.
So the moral of the story is there's lots of data out there on how these drugs work, but we're all individuals, and I'm so glad your oncologist let you try. I'm sure if something had started to go sideways, they would have put you right back on the Perjeta.
Yeah, or we would have had to discuss another line because I was seriously never going to go back on that drug. That was how bad the side effects are, that I just was like, I'm never doing this again. So yeah, it would have just, but I mean, what I always tell stage 4 patients is that we're in uncharted territory. So they really don't know. So they don't really know that people haven't been living this long with metastatic disease. So now we're kind of like, I'm probably one of the few people that had been on Perjeta for that long. And to be able to say that it actually took 2 years for the symptom to develop, which is why why I didn't get caught in the clinical trials. And it took about a year for the symptoms to stop, even after I stopped the drug.
Wow.
So yeah, so there's just a lot that they don't know. And, you know, you are a patient of one and you are individual. And yes, it's good to look at data and stats, but it is a little different for each person.
Yes. And asking for specifics is not a bad thing. So if your doctor says, this is what happens, it's totally fine to say, do you have a patient I can talk to where that happened? Or do you have a paper that says that? Or is there another doctor that I can go talk to? And I'm sure you guys would agree that if you start asking questions and your doctor gets a little squirrely, that's a bad sign.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep, I agree.
Yes. So there was a question, Julia, for you about how long you've been living with brain mets. You had brain mets from the beginning, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So actually next Saturday is the LBBC conference, and I'll be speaking at that conference. And I realized it is my 9-year anniversary of my, in theory, it's the early stage diagnosis because I didn't get the confirmation of Mets until August after my son was born. But yeah, almost 9 years.
Which absolutely shows that there's hope, that people can be living with this disease. It's not an immediate death sentence. In a newly diagnosed group, we were talking this morning just about how at the beginning, you just don't know how to put what the doctors are saying into context. But talking with people who have been living for a year, 5 years, 9 years, whatever it is, can really help you put what the doctors are saying into context. So, Julia, would you like to start about just advocacy and what led you to GRASP? And if you want to show that great picture of you guys, like, you know, asking about GRASP for the first time at San Antonio, that would be fine, or you don't have to.
Sure. I mean, I can share the slide deck, and there are a few pictures.
I was going to say, Julia, do you have the functionality to share your screen on the bottom? If not, if you wanted to email me the PowerPoint, I can share mine.
I think I do. It's kind of new, but
all these different platforms are just slightly different.
Yeah.
We like to keep everyone excited.
On your toes.
It looks like I have it. So Julie, if you're having any issues, I can also.
So I said go, and now it's processing.
Should have theme music like from Jeopardy.
I guess in the meantime, I'll just say one thing, Abigail, about what you said on like survivorship and people living for a long time. And I'm very, very fortunate to still be alive with the diagnosis that I had. And I realize how rare it is to live that long with that complicated of a case. But it for me, it's very important to be like that one person that someone knows that lived for that long, because I know that person for me, you know. And when I heard about Terlisa, I thought she was a legend. And you know, the day that
well, she kind of is a legend. Yeah. I mean, really. Let's just be honest.
She was not a person, just a legend. And like, it's real, like knowing that it's factual, like there, it is possible. There is someone that has lived with MBC for 20 plus years. And that's really, really, I think all we are looking for when we hear all these tragic stories. But is there a good story? Is there, you know, would it be irrational to have that hope? And no, I don't think it is. Yeah.
Yes.
So do you all see the slides now? It says,
yes,
no.
There it is.
No, that's not it.
Oh.
Oh, wait, I uploaded the wrong one.
Which is totally fine. But that's such a great reminder that that clinging to those stories or watching those people who are just knocking things out of the park, it's really helpful to have that in front of you.
And I had sort of an opposite experience where, you know, I thought I lost my father to a rare type of cancer. So it's funny that the doctor told me that I was too young to have cancer. And my dad died at 57 of a very rare aggressive type of cancer. And it was like, well, I have a lot of cancer in my family, but not breast cancer. But yeah, and with that experience, he was diagnosed in June and he died in September. And he was de novo metastatic from the beginning. We're not really sure. I was a very different patient advocate then. I really didn't know anything. And so I was diagnosed in April, and I thought that I was going to go through chemo throughout the summer and then I was going to die. That's what I thought. I thought that's how it's going to go because that's all I know. This is how it's going to be. And, you know, what happened was our paths took this divergence where like he kept getting worse and I kept getting better. Like I actually was exercising through chemo and like I looked good. Everybody thought I looked good, even though I was going through chemo and I was losing my hair. They were like, you're glowing, like you just look really strong. And so I kind of figured like at some point I was like, maybe this is going to be okay for me. Maybe I'm going to make it. And we did a scan in August and I had NED, even the spot on my lung was gone. And what happened for me is that I actually became afraid to meet other metastatic patients. I was afraid to meet patients that were doing worse than I was. And not only did I have some survivor's guilt, which I still deal with to this day, I was just afraid that they were going to scare me. I was afraid that I was going to see a sick patient that was going to really scare me. But I have to say that as soon as I started meeting people, and I think my first big advocacy event was the Metavivor Stage 4 Stampede, it was like life altering to meet people that had gone through a stage 4 diagnosis. Like they just get you in a way that it's like a trauma that we've had to experience. And when you have gone through a similar trauma, like you just get each other right away. And so Julia and I feel like we've known each other our whole lives, and really it's only been like a couple years. And I think people will be surprised to hear that, but like it just bonds you in a way. So I always try to encourage people, like, take your time, but you will be surprised because you'll meet people doing way better than you. You know, then I started meeting people living their life for 20 years, looking really great. And I was like, oh, like I've only been doing this for like 3 or 4 years. So, and then I do meet people, of course, that are sicker than I am. And I've lost many friends. And So, but you kind of, it's such a rich experience to meet these people that, you gain so much from meeting them that I would never trade it for anything. And to quote Emily Garnett, who I know is a dear friend of Advocate, I know she's just a dear friend of all of ours. What did she say? It's the worst club with the best people. And it's so true. It's like none of us wanted to be here, but since we are here, we're meeting these like very special people. So always encourage newly diagnosed to take your time with it. But if you can, when you meet people, I think it makes a big difference.
To be absolutely precise, she would say it's the shittiest club with the best people.
No, I would never miss an opportunity to curse. So I'm glad that that's what she said. That's way better. It makes way more
No, she absolutely did. But I think there's hardly anybody else where the first time you meet somebody, you're talking about real things, right? You're talking about death. You're talking about how to make the most of your life. We're not spending any time on the fluff anymore. And I think that is what really makes this community so significant. So I know we're having some issues with pictures. Don't worry about that. But Julia, tell us about when GRASP was conceived, like when it was happening in real time, even if we don't have the pictorial evidence.
Yeah. So yeah, Christine and I, like she said, we met at a conference, and for the two of us, we had been living with NBC for a few years and really started slowly in advocacy. I know some people, I think you're one of them, Abigail, that really like jumped in and started changing the world right away. And
I don't know about that, but
we really took our time, focused on our health, and I didn't meet someone with NBC for a while. And for me, my first experience in advocacy was when my doctor asked me to share my story at a fundraiser for his research. And I was like, okay. And I did. And apparently he raised a lot of money. I mean, this story is just very tragic and shocking. You can get money you can get people to put their wallets to work when they hear this story of the pregnancy and the baby and all of that. And I thought, okay, if there's anything good that can come out of this, then I'll tell this story and I'll do that. And for the two of us, we didn't know exactly where our advocacy would go, but for the two of us, working with researchers was really like hopeful for us, and we saw how much meaning we added to their work. And we had a few experiences at grant reviews or at conferences where we created very special relationships, and it was clear, like I could see how the work of that person was going to forever change because they met someone who was impacted by their work or the work of someone like them. So that's where we decided we wanted to play in the world of patients connecting with scientists. And our signature program is bringing together patients and scientists at these big scientific conferences to discuss posters. So Christine was at a very big conference, the ASCO, the American Society for Clinical Oncology, and she was walking the posters and ran into a friend of ours, and then they started to walk together kind of naturally and had an experience that was amazing. And
I should say this friend is Dr. Corey Painter, a cancer researcher and a cancer survivor and a wonderful all-around human being. But the unique part was that it was being able to walk almost with my own personal translator through this conference. Sorry, go ahead, Julia.
Yeah, so they didn't plan it, but it was they both got a lot out of it, right? So, and they got into the advocate lounge where I was, and Christina's like telling me that she just had this amazing experience and we have to tweet about it and everyone should be doing something like this. And And when she did, people started responding that they wanted to participate in that program. Where do I sign up? That sounds wonderful. How do I? And obviously that didn't exist at the time, and it just meant that we needed to make it happen, and we did. We worked with Sandy Stanford and from San Antonio. And we created this organization and this program. We have ways for people to sign up. We match people based on their interests with the posters that they might be interested in discussing. We allow patients to sign up based on topics, and we create these groups and bring them together to walk the poster sessions. And then the pandemic hit, so the walk became.
Like, can we talk about the poster session just for a minute for people who haven't been to these big scientific conferences? So like these posters, I mean, how big are they? They're gigantic. It's like the side of a car.
Yeah, I mean, I like to tell people that have never been at a conference like this is think a school science fair.
Yes.
Yes.
On steroids.
But like on steroids.
You know, those big boards, instead of like the volcano, it has like really tiny print with many charts and pictures of mice dissected, and yes. So that's what posters are.
And it's this huge room. I mean, we're talking like huge
thousands.
Echoing cavernous room with hundreds of posters. And then there's these scientific people standing by the poster, right? So the people who drafted the poster probably had to like, somebody was talking about like how they had to carry it on the plane and hold it. And it's like this whole big thing to get the actual physical poster there. Yeah. But it's intimidating for those of us who didn't go to medical school, don't have a science background, to walk into like these, and statistics, right? The posters are full of these statistics, and I barely passed statistics. So it's complicated and it's overwhelming, right? So having a person who really knows her stuff, I mean, how amazing is it that Corey would do that?
Yeah, it's a really good point, because when I try to explain this to people who have never attended a scientific conference, because I've actually had to create posters in my pre-cancer life. I have posters that I've gone to conferences and created. So, and what I liked about the poster session is that you are really getting one-on-one time with the researcher. And so that was like a really cool, that to me was always, I like that much better than being in a big room where one person is talking and you're just there listening. And I would never ask a question in front of all those people, but one-on-one, it's much easier. So that was kind of what I was drawn to. But in explaining what a poster is, it's literally a scientific paper on a big poster. So because people would be like, why do people need poster? Kind of sounds almost like it's like a misnomer, because it kind of sounds like you just have like a title maybe. And I remember showing my aunt was asking me, she's like, I don't get it. Why do you need a whole session to discuss a poster? I was like, let me show you a poster. Let me show you an example of a poster. Really tiny print, the abstract, the experiment is explained, all the results, and then the conclusions, and then picture. So it's like, it is very overwhelming. And I'll tell you, ASCO is insane. It's like 40,000 people. I mean, I don't know how they're going to do it, because when I was there walking with Corey, I was literally like milling around, like very close contact with all these people. It was so tight. I mean, even though it was a huge convention center, it was very tight and we had to weave our way around the crowds, but it was amazing, because I literally had this like built-in person who I could say, I don't even know what that graph means. Can you explain what that graph is? And then I was giving her my perspective as a patient, like, oh, this drug might look really great, but nobody can stay on it. It's like a terrible drug, has this horrible diarrhea. And she was like, oh, wow. So we were just, learning from each other.
Which is so, so important. So I will tell you my experience from San Antonio, and Laura was there as well, because it was probably only about a third to maybe 40% of the normal attendees in person, because so many people did the online only option, that it actually felt pretty safe, because it was that same huge gigantic space that would normally accommodate. San Antonio is a little smaller than ASCO, but there were just far less bodies there. So anyway, hopefully ASCO will be like that. But I think to a certain extent, some of the days of these gigantic conferences was with 50,000, 40,000 people from all over the world. I think we're going to have some online options going forward. And so you guys pivoted with Grasp. So Julia, sorry, I interrupted you. If you want to pick up where you left off.
Yeah, no. So, like everyone else, we had to adapt to the pandemic. So we had created this whole program that the whole basis of it was human connection. And then humans couldn't connect. So we pivoted to online and started doing these small discussions in breakout rooms. And so we meet in a big room where everyone joins a Zoom, and then we send people into small breakout rooms. Oh, you were able to.
Yay, it worked.
Oh,
Right. So the breakout rooms then are made up of who would theoretically be somewhere in person.
Yeah. So there's a slide. If you go forward, I think one or two, couple more. No, it's back. Yeah, that's it.
There we go.
On this slide, you can see both what an in-person group is. Actually, you can see Abigail's back on that.
When I had hair.
When you had hair, yeah. And that's a group where the person next to Abigail is a scientist, and she is discussing this work that they stopped at this poster, and the author of the poster is Dr. Ramaswamy with this scarf around her neck. She's standing there and talking about her poster, and anyone can walk by and talk to her and ask her questions about her work. And that's what this small group of people is doing, where sometimes the small group of people is like all scientists. Sometimes it's like people from pharma. This group is very specifically thought of with an experienced advocate. So Abigail is kind of translating the language from the scientist to the patients. If it's complicated, she'll pause and ask, can you explain that in other terms? And then if a patient is sharing a personal experience, she connects that to the science. And so this is a group talking with the scientist right there. And then at the bottom, you have the example of how these sessions work virtually, where everyone's just a rectangle on the screen.
Yeah, and I just want to highlight what's so cool about Grasp is that woman with the scarf, she's a medical oncologist, a breast medical oncologist who's living with stage 4 breast cancer. And she is a wonderful human being. Like, she's a wonderful person, really wants to teach. She's talking to these advocates about an MBC focused clinic. And I remember when that's Jasmine, I think that's Jasmine, right? Beside Tia. So Jasmine was a co-founder of For the Breast of Us. And she walked away with tears in her eyes because she didn't even know that you could create a clinic that's focused specifically on that aesthetic. She's like, this could help my community. I could do something with this. So the connections that we're making are really powerful, very impactful. And it's partly why we really harp on keeping the group small, because I just don't think you can get that connection by having, a big, like a webinar, for example. We have 50 people attending and one person talking. That is not what we're going for. We want conversations. I wanted Jasmine to feel comfortable crying and sharing her story, and she wouldn't have been able to do that in a big webinar. I mean, maybe she would have. I am personally not somebody who's not going to do that in front of a lot of people. So I really like the intimate setting. And I think it's something that is unique from a lot of the other programs. And we do get a lot of questions about, can we expand it? Can we make it bigger? Can we record? And we kind of played with that idea for a little bit, but then realized, no, we can't, because it takes away from it like compromises the structure and the essence of what GRASP is. So we keep it small, and it works really well with these breakout rooms now virtually. And one of the things we decided was that we're always going to keep a virtual component now. We reach so many more advocates and patients that otherwise can't travel to a conference. So we're actually now trying to ease our way back into the in-person. So we are considering an in-person session at ASCO. I am personally very nervous about it. I'm like, oh my gosh, how are we going to pull this off? But because the virtual is just, it's kind of an easy, I mean, there was a lot of tech involved, and we do all these registrations, online. But once we got past that learning curve, it was really easy. It was like, okay, now it's like a well-oiled machine. So yeah, just we'll stay posted about whether or not we're going to do it at ASCO in person. We'll see.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that I hear from doctors who don't participate in GRASP is the concern about being asked for their opinions about individual medical scenarios. And, how do you guys address that?
So we provide a few training materials and guidelines. That's one that's highlighted and underlined, and I mean, absolutely is not the place to be asking for medical advice. In fact, if someone if someone does it, the mentor will know how to deal with that situation and will try to, change the topic or let the person know. But I think in general, advocates need to know this, that whenever one person does that, it hurts the whole idea of patient involvement, because that's exactly the argument of anyone that thinks patients should stay in the clinic and never go beyond.
Yes. And not to say that it's not very valuable for patients to express their individual experiences. In fact, Laura is very connected now to some researchers that I randomly met because they were looking at side effects of Piqray or alpelisib, and I walked up to them and I'm like, "That's wrong."
Yeah.
This is what it's like.
Yeah.
So that, I think we talked about earlier, that's the value that patients bring is the actual experience. So sharing your experiences or side effects or struggles is not the same as asking somebody to say, okay, this is how you should treat it.
What
And I
you
have
should
been
do. Yes.
exactly. And I have been in groups where the doctor, you can just see them, they want to tell them what to do, it's almost like it's gonna burst out of them. They want to help so much. And so we've done a lot of pausing and talk offline and those kinds of things. But the magic really can happen in these small groups when people are really talking about their personal experiences. So if an advocate, if a patient, right, let's not even call them an advocate yet, somebody who's a patient wants to get involved with GRASP, how do they do that?
So if they go to our website, graspcancer.org, there's a link called Join Us. And if they click that, fill out a form with their interests, and their interests may be what their actual subtype is, and sites of metastasis and things like that. But we're not necessarily asking you to tell us what your exact diagnosis is. You may be interested in a variety of things that maybe you don't live with. And that will be what your profile will look like for us. And I think this is a good time to talk about a different program that we also have, where we realized that these discussions that happen at these big conferences are great, but there's science happening all the time. And we want those scientists to be talking to patients even before they do the poster, because we want them to have the patient input in order to write what they write on the poster. So we started facilitating some connections offline, and we often have a scientist come to us and say, I would like to speak with patients about this work. And we contact patients from our database, and we see if they're interested in participating in a small, intimate conversation with a researcher working on X. And that's why what you fill out in your profile matters, because that's really what we use in order to match you with work that interests you.
But these scientists or pharma companies or whoever, they don't have access to your database, right?
No.
Okay, good.
Not at all.
Literally it's a match.com. So what we do, but nobody else gets to see it. So we'll see.
We're the matchers.
Yeah.
We're Cupids.
So it's actually a good reminder too, that if you are already a member, you should update your profile. It's really easy to do, but we look at that when an opportunity comes our way. We'll have a researcher reach out to us and say, I'm really looking for this demographic with this type of cancer. Like, we use the profile because we can't possibly, we have almost 1,000 people now in the directory. So we can't know everybody's situation. So we really do use that. So it's really easy to update. You just go to breastcancer.org/dashboard. And once you're there, it's very easy to update your profile. So, if your interests have changed, if you have a new cancer diagnosis, that's all useful information, because we do cover all cancers, not just breast cancer. We are, I would say the majority of the people involved in GRAS are breast cancer, either scientists or patients, but we're going to be at ASCO, and ASCO covers all cancers. So yeah, it's just it's a good way for us to know who you'd like to be matched with. And we want to keep doing that, and we want to make sure that you're happy. So that helps.
I know I think it was 2021 or maybe it was 2020 when you guys were doing the pull up a seat conversations so that Black patients were able to speak about their experiences as minorities. You guys want to talk a little bit about that program?
Sure. So yeah, we collaborated with the Tiger Lily Foundation, and really this model of a small, intimate group allows people that maybe wouldn't have the microphone that often to have an environment that they do want to share, be it patients so Tiger Lily was working on disparities and still is doing very important work in that area. And we created a program with them that started with a talk by an expert, and then eventually over the course of the meeting, created breakout rooms where patients that are experiencing breast cancer, Black women, are talking to pharma, doctors, other healthcare providers about their experience and sharing what it's like, how they face very unique challenges, the kind of things that we have no idea they experience, and really like first accounts of these situations. Yeah.
And in fact, at San Antonio in 2019, disparities and the experiences of Black patients was something that was front and center. Wasn't there a grant by someone who had passed away?
Yeah. Do you want to talk about that, Christine?
Oh,
Amanda's family.
Yeah. So we had a private donation come in, and from the mother of a dear friend of mine that had passed away. And she really wanted us to do something very meaningful with that. And we had just started. We didn't know what we were doing. We weren't an organization yet. We were like very clueless and totally thought this was going to be like a really small pilot project at San Antonio, or like 20 people. It was going to be very small. And it was huge. It was like 120 people that actually showed up. And what we did with that grant was we decided that, and this is really to our collaboration with Mayma and Tiger Lily. Mayma is the founder of the Tiger Lily Foundation. Really helped us understand that we just need to make sure that Black patients are getting a platform, that they actually have access to the same things that we have access to. And so what we decided to do was we sent 12 people, I think it was 12, 12 people to San Antonio, all paid for, hotel, tickets, registration. And 11 of those 12 people were African American. And while they were there, we had like a whole itinerary for them to follow. And one of the things they had to do, of course, was participate in GRASP. And it was just it was really special to see this diverse crowd, at San Antonio, all congregated around these posters. And we even had like a video crew, like following, like we looked like we were really popular. And it was, and they had signs, holding, and people, and what was happening, what was really cool was that the poster authors were like, what's that? Like, I want my poster to be on whatever that is. Like, what's going on with that? So it was a really, Julie and I were like just crying, like at San Antonio, because it just went well beyond our wildest dreams and expectations. But I just remember like one of my dear friends, Jersey Baker, I remember her walking away saying, I love science. It's so cool. I had no idea. And I was like, that's the whole point. It's like, she didn't have a science background, but it doesn't take a science background. You just have to have a good teacher. And that's something we're pretty selective with the scientists that we choose. Many of them have experience working with patient advocates, and they're very excited to work with us. But now I would say we're expanding now to include these poster authors, many of which are early in their career, they're young trainees. So they're not as good at communicating the science, but this is an opportunity for them to train, to learn how to do that. And we work with trainees all the time. Julia and I do. And it's really funny because they really struggle to communicate it to a lay audience. And GRASP is really helpful for that. And then on the bidirectional part is that advocates get confidence. They become more confident in asking questions and sharing their stories. So it really does work both ways. Both groups are benefiting.
One of the other things that you guys do is you highlight advocates that we've lost. And Amanda's picture was on those the posters that showed us where to go, right? So we were looking for the logo and looking for Amanda's picture. But in terms of contributing to the legacies of those people that we've left behind, you guys want to talk about how you've done that?
Yeah. So it all started with Amanda, really. So we often talk about how when we are explaining to a new patient advocate how to, ask a question to a poster author, we say we want them to be a little bit like Amanda, because she would like walk straight to a poster and be like, why does this and this and this, and why aren't you doing that? And, so we wanted to honor her at that first in-person San Antonio. So we had these stickers made, emblems, and we put them on the posters that were selected for GRASP. Unfortunately, that was the only time that we were able to actually physically give them the emblem, because they really loved it. But since then, we've done it digitally. So there's a virtual image that they can put on their slides, and what we have done is we have honored a different person that has really put in their valuable time and energy while living with cancer to make the lives of others a little bit better. So yeah, here are a few examples of advocates that have really touched us, and we wanted to highlight their story. And this is really important at the beginning of the sessions. If you think about the scientists that are joining this discussion, sometimes and oftentimes it's people that don't work with patients at all. They're in the lab somewhere, right? Sometimes it's people that never met a patient with the exact type of cancer that they are working on. So we start the session saying we're honoring Shantae Randall. She did this, and she was a mother, and she was in the military, and she had TNBC, and she, so those things put like, there's a real person behind this, and it really brings like a whole different energy to these discussions.
Yeah, you can see it's a patient-led program, because scientist-led program don't do this. It's not the same. It's like they don't know. They just don't know. But this is something that and this design, I just love this emblem design. And so the idea is that, we put it on the posters and you see that person. It's almost like you get to you can ask questions about the person, it's just like their story is still being told. And that's the way, everybody honors the people that have passed in different ways. And Julia and I just take this very seriously. We want to keep sharing their stories. They were very meaningful, valuable people to us. And it's such a shame that other people can't get to meet them. So this is the closest we can get. It's like, okay, let me explain. But yeah, it really did come from Amanda's like the inspiration. So she's there. She's on the right below. Sandy Spivey is on the top. Amanda's right there with the glasses below. Shantae is to the left. And then Michael Kovarik is a male breast cancer patient that passed away. And all these people here, and there's many others that we have honored, but these were very special people, made a real difference in the advocacy community.
Absolutely. And the community is poorer for not having them around. But one thing that I know each and every one of them did was they participated in research. And so I think one of the great things about this program is to take the questions, or to take the stigma, or to take the, research being this strange thing that we don't understand. It makes it more real. It makes it more something that we have access to. And hopefully at the end of the day, that gets more than 6% of us living with MBC to participate in trials. I heard that statistic recently and I about fell out of my chair. Yeah. Because the only way that we have Herceptin, the only way that we have the CDK4/6 inhibitors that has extended life for so many people, is because people signed up to participate in those trials. And it is so important to remember that is part of the way that we can individually give back. But I also wanted to highlight another way that we can give back, which is the pharma companies are starting to add patient advisors to their steering committees. Yep. And I'm personally serving on 2 right now for Novartis. And coming to the research piece at the beginning, when they're designing the trial, when they're like, maybe we should try to get this question answered, having somebody who's actually been on the medication or just been a patient, because so many of these doctors and so many of the researchers have absolutely no idea what that looks like. And so that is another space. And so do researchers come to you guys when they're looking for patients to consult on their trials as well?
Yeah, so we have connected with a number of trainees, so oncologists often have a network of patient advocates that they already work with. Young people that are just getting started and that are writing their first grants, they need to be introduced to people, right? So we do get that often. And one thing that we work really hard at doing is trying to bring in new people, new patients to participate. We want different voices to be represented. I should not be talking with too many researchers because my problems are unique to me. There are people that have very different disease stories, life stories, and things like that. So yeah, I think, and then another big problem, a big hurdle is how do you get patients involved and maybe remunerate them for their time, time. If you don't, then what kind of patient can afford to do work that is voluntary? And then are those the only voices that you want represented in research? And I would say the answer is absolutely not to all of these questions.
There are so many ways that research generally can be improved. I personally think that a patient should be at the table from the beginning, that's an easy thing. And I'm actually going to be sending out a survey relatively soon because I'm building a spreadsheet of all of the different companies that pay and how much, so that advocates will have that information. I've been told too many times that the quote unquote going rate is something that it's not. So anyway, stay tuned for that. But I think that it's important, it's incumbent upon every advocate when they're invited to the table. 100% everybody should be invited to the table. But when you're invited to the table, find out what everybody else is getting paid, because patients should be paid for their expertise just as much as the doctors are. Doctors went to medical school. They got the medical knowledge. You've got the researchers that have all of the, the understanding of what's being, what questions maybe need to be answered. But when it comes to the actual real life, the only people who have that experience are patients. So patients need to be there early and often. As a lawyer, one of my
I would say definitely with industry in collaborations, and then with researchers, maybe when they write grants, we're more and more encouraging them to include that cost as another consultant, just like they have many.
Absolutely. One of my big pet peeves as a lawyer are these dense documents that patients are expected to read and understand and sign before you walk into a research study. And I've done 4. And every time a non-lawyer tried to explain this legal contract to me, and every single time they were almost completely wrong about everything. And I'm sure they wanted to be correct. I'm not saying that there was any desire to mislead, but we lawyers write in a very specific way. So I think there can be a lot done in terms of things being done in plain language, which is exactly what you guys are helping to teach these researchers. I firmly believe that if somebody is an expert, they can explain what they do to a 5-year-old, right? I mean, if you really know what you're doing, you can explain it to a 5-year-old. And I'm not saying that people are at the level of a 5-year-old, but quite frankly, when we are in the middle of treatment, regardless of what treatment it is, our cognitive abilities are impaired. Totally. And we're not professionals, and we're not the people who are at the top of our games either. All right, so it is 3:00. We are here at the end. Sorry, I have to jump on my soapbox a little bit here, but one thing I ask everybody in our webinars to do is to give us a word that you think exemplifies our discussion today, and I deliberately, don't tell you in advance, because every conversation is unique. I think the word that I have always felt from GRASP, and one of the reasons why I wanted you guys to come on this series, is legacy. Because not only are you building a legacy for yourselves and your impact, but you're helping others to build their legacies as well. Laura, does a specific word come to mind for you?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you again, Julia and Christine, for joining us today. I think I attended one of your poster virtual sessions where we were giving feedback to a young novice poster scientist researcher. And I just remember some of the clip art they decided to put on their poster was so out of taste. So I just, as a patient advocate, those little things like mean something to the visual learner and everything. And it was just one of those funny things. So I appreciate all of the great work you're doing. So my word today is science. You really said it. Like when we leave these things, you get so excited about like T cells or circulating tumor cells or like blood things and liquid biopsies that you just go out into the world. Then I forget I'm not a scientist. But in those like minutes, I am so enthralled and excited, and absolutely being explained some really rich, complex topics in layman's terms. So science is my word. Thank you.
How about you, Julia?
So I think my word is why. And like, why do we do this? Why patients always ask, why are you studying this? And it's really what shakes the researcher the most. And that's what they should be thinking of. There should be a meaning. It should not be because that protein looked cool on the Petri dish. It should be because it might impact lives if we go after this target or something like that. So I think why is something we all should be asking ourselves.
Julia is an overachiever. She had a word and an entire complete sentence all in one. I do want to say too, because I did forget to mention this, that that at the last meeting, I think it was San Antonio, you guys piloted a Spanish-speaking group to be able to pull in our Spanish-speaking brothers and sisters who can sometimes struggle to access because everything's in English. So I did just want to highlight that as well. Christine, what's your word for today?
I think mine is just empower, because that is what GRASP is all about. We want to empower. I mean, I don't even know if we said this, but it actually stands for Guiding Researchers and Advocates to Scientific Partnerships. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to create partnerships. We want to inspire researchers to work with patients and vice versa. And so empower, I think, really, it empowers us. I have to say, every time Julia and I finish a GRASP session, we're like, oh, that was so amazing. Even when they're exhausting and so much work and we're like so tired afterwards, we're still just so rejuvenated because we're like, oh my gosh, there are good people in this world who are trying to find a cure for this disease. And it feels very empowering to participate. So that would be my word.
Wonderful. Well, thank you guys both for being here today, for giving up some of your Easter Sunday. Remember that website is graspcancer.org, and Laura put that in the comments. It'll be in the show notes as well. But poke around on the website, sign up, even if you're not an active patient right at this moment, even if you are a family member. We heard earlier how a family was able to send 12 people to a major cancer conference, and that's what they use some funding in order to be able to build their daughter's legacy. How impactful is it for families to be able to do something like that? And there's certainly lots of room to donate money. Julia or Christine or their two other cohorts at GRASP will absolutely talk to you about taking your money, but it can be put into a space that is immediately impactful on patients, not something where it goes into a big endowment somewhere, which are obviously very important, but this is a small, very adept organization to be able to bring on new projects and also really make an impact directly. So consider that. Coming up on our NBC Sunday series, we have Jose and Amy from A Caregiver's Guide to Cancer, who are going to come talk about what it is like living as a couple. Amy is or it might be Amy. Sorry if I'm saying your name wrong. Is the caregiver, and Jose is the patient. We'll also have a Medicare specialist come and talk about what it looks like to design a Medicare plan that includes whatever supplements you need, whether you're going on Medicare for your age or because of disability. And we're going to be talking about radiology coming up soon, and all of the different types of radiology and whatever else we dream up. So if you have an idea for a topic, or if there's something specific that you want to hear about, please don't hesitate to let us know. And did I forget anything, Laura? I'm always trying to remember all the things I need to say.
That's great. So people could always visit survivingbreastcancer.org/events for all of our upcoming events and webinars that we will be offering, and they're always 100% free. All right. Until
Thanks, Laura.
next Sunday webinar. Appreciate it, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Oh, no.